14-year-old April Millsap, born on the first day of 2000, lived with her mother and stepfather David in the small town of Armada, Michigan. In the summer of 2014, she was a friendly high school student, a sociable and cheerful girl who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. April's parents divorced when she was 6, but the girl quickly befriended her mother's new partner. April enjoyed drawing, walking with friends and her dog named Penny. She was dating Austin, a boy 1 year older, whom she met at school. By the age of 14, April was already independent and often walked the dog alone. The town of Armada, which at that time had a population of about 1,700 people, was considered very safe and cozy, where everyone knew each other by face. On July 24, 2014, April slept until lunch and then spent the whole day at the computer. Around 6 p.m., she decided to go for her usual walk with Penny, which typically lasted no more than an hour. However, an hour and a half passed, and the girl still hadn't returned. Her mother tried to call and text her daughter, but April didn't respond. The worried woman contacted Austin, thinking the young couple was together. But he replied that he hadn't seen April all day. None of the girl's friends knew where she was either. Half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. It was Austin with a friend who came to make sure April was okay. The boy showed April's mother an alarming message he received from the girl at 6:28 p.m., saying, "Someone tried to kidnap me." Jennifer immediately called her husband David, and the three of them rushed to search, knowing April's favorite routes well. Splitting up to cover more ground, they notified the police. Around 8:20 p.m., a couple of joggers stumbled upon April's frightened dog Penny with a leash. The dog ran away from people but stopped as if calling them to follow. Eventually, the dog led them to thick bushes where the girl's body lay in a ravine. It was difficult to recognize April. Soon, forensic experts and law enforcement officers from other regions arrived at the scene. After all, there were only 2 police officers in Armada, not prepared to investigate brutal murders, which were extremely rare here. None of them had ever encountered such crimes in this quiet town before. Due to the lack of resources for the investigation, the sheriff immediately sought help from more experienced law enforcement officers from surrounding areas. April's body was found at the bottom of a ravine. The girl was lying on her back, her shoes scattered a few meters away from her. The clothes and underwear were pulled down, indicating a sexual motive for the crime. However, further examination revealed no signs of rape. Investigators suggested that the attacker tried to do it but faced April's desperate resistance, or someone scared him off, possibly the dog or a random passerby. In any case, the girl was brutally beaten. Her body was covered with numerous bruises, from defensive wounds on her hands to a disfigured face. Forensic experts counted at least 48 separate injuries, mostly concentrated on the head and neck. April's head was covered in clotted blood, and there were signs of strangulation on her neck. But these were not typical marks from hands or any object. The strange prints on the victim's face and neck turned out to be shoe tread marks. The killer had trampled her and continued to stomp on her body. According to the forensic report, April's death was caused by trampling, which lasted over 10 minutes. Traces of a large shoe sole indicated that it was a heavy-set man. The girl died in terrible agony, her face so badly disfigured it was impossible to recognize. Only later was April identified by her clothes and jewelry by her relatives, who were searching for the missing girl just as the police were working at the scene. The bloody mess left of the girl's face shocked her loved ones, especially her mother. Jennifer, Austin, and his friend were immediately taken to the police station for questioning to form a circle of potential suspects and find out the latest events in the victim's life. April's mother was quickly ruled out as a suspect, while the police's attention turned to Austin. The young man said that recently his relationship with April had been strained. The couple often quarreled and was actually on the verge of breaking up. Shortly before the murder, they had another fight. Even more suspicion was aroused by the message April sent to her boyfriend before her death. She wrote that someone tried to kidnap her. However, Austin simply ignored this frightening text. Still, he insisted that he couldn't have done it because he received the message with a significant delay due to some glitch. In the detective's opinion, even after this, Austin's reaction was too sluggish. He didn't inform the police but just went to look for the girl himself. The young man explained that he was still offended by April after their fight and considered her text an attempt at manipulation to make him worry and be the first to reconcile. Austin didn't believe the situation was truly serious. Austin couldn't explain the reason for their last quarrel, blaming it all on the girl's incomprehensible behavior. This only intensified the investigators' suspicions, as it gave the boy a motive for the attack. Usually, such crimes are committed by the victim's partners. It was decided to detain Austin for further questioning. The police asked him to describe in detail how his day went to track the young man's movements and check his alleged alibi. Austin said that around 4 p.m., he met with a friend to help him bring a TV home. Then the buddies went to grab a bite at the nearest McDonald's. The boy's words were confirmed by the restaurant's CCTV footage. Austin was indeed there around 6:30 p.m., a few minutes after April sent the message about the attempted abduction. So the young man clearly could not have been involved in the murder of his girlfriend. Having cleared Austin of suspicion, the detectives decided to carefully examine the victim's cell phone, hoping to find messages from a possible stalker there. However, April's phone was missing from the crime scene. The killer likely took it with him, turned it off to avoid tracking, and threw it away somewhere else. A thorough search for the phone and other physical evidence along April's entire route, which involved dog handlers and even the FBI, initially yielded no results. But the next day, about a kilometer from the massacre site, the girl's mobile phone was found and sent for examination. Thanks to this, it was discovered that April had been actively texting with a schoolboy named Roger, known for his unpleasant character and frequent behavioral problems. However, he was soon also excluded from the list of suspects due to a confirmed alibi. Meanwhile, information about the brutal murder was disseminated through local media, urging possible witnesses who noticed something strange on the trail around the time of the crime to contact the police. However, for now, this only agitated the community of the small town and instilled fear in its residents. Everyone was afraid to leave home and let their children out on the street unattended, as the horrific killer was still at large. Not only the brutality of the attack was shocking but also the fact that it happened in broad daylight. No one felt safe anymore. Suddenly, a witness came to the police station with interesting information. The girl said that on the day of April's murder, around 6 p.m., she was sitting by the window of her house and noticed an unfamiliar white van slowly driving down the street. Two men were in the driver's and passenger seats. They seemed to be stalking someone, which immediately seemed suspicious to the girl. When the men noticed the witness in the window, they suddenly stopped and stared at her, pointing their fingers at her home. This made the girl nervous, after which the van drove away. Now, learning about April's murder, the witness was afraid that these two might be involved in the crime. Perhaps they saw the schoolgirl as easy prey and attacked her. The detectives found this information noteworthy. It was quite possible that the white van was indeed cruising the neighborhood in search of a victim, and the unfortunate lot fell to April. The police again appealed to the public, releasing a description of the van and sketches of the suspicious men, hoping to get more information. The very next day, two friends came to the station, confirming that they had indeed driven down that street that evening in the mentioned vehicle. The men are engaged in construction and renovation, and the van driver had previously done work in this area. He was just showing his partner the houses he had worked on, including the one where the witness lived. Their words were verified, and suspicion was lifted from them. The townspeople tried their best to help the investigation. A day later, several more people contacted the police, pointing to a suspicious motorcyclist. Eyewitnesses saw April walking the trail with her dog around 6:30 p.m., accompanied by an adult man pushing his motorcycle. They were just walking and talking. At that time, the witnesses thought it was the girl's father. He was behaving calmly, and April didn't look scared, so no suspicion arose. But now, given the circumstances, people began to doubt that man. None of the victim's relatives or acquaintances could identify him by description. Apparently, April was not familiar with him before. Judging by the witnesses' accounts, this meeting took place just when the schoolgirl texted her boyfriend about the failed abduction attempt. So suspicions about the mysterious companion only grew. There were few bikers in town, so this man's appearance drew the attention of locals. Moreover, the motorcycle had a rather unusual and rare blue and white color. The description was quite accurate. Just 3 days after the murder, on July 27, 2014, a motorcycle fully matching the description was found. It was parked near one of the houses in the city. When the police arrived there, the vehicle was still in place. A man tinkering in the garden said the motorcycle was not his but belonged to his 32-year-old friend James VanCallis. He lives in the neighboring town of Goodell's, 30 kilometers from Armada. The information was confirmed. On July 28, officers met with the bike owner to ask him about the events of the day April was killed. At first, James willingly cooperated with the investigation, agreeing to answer any questions. He claimed that he was at his friend's house in Armada that day, which his friend confirmed. But the police considered such an alibi unreliable, as the witness was a buddy who could cover for the criminal. And there were slight discrepancies in the timeline. The man was asked to provide the shoes he was wearing that day. He showed white sneakers, but their tread pattern did not match the marks on April's body, and there were no blood stains on them. There was a suspicion that these were not the right shoes. The detectives decided to find out more about James before crossing him off the list. It turned out that he had several convictions for nonviolent crimes, burglaries in 2005 to 2006 and non-payment of alimony. But while digging into the suspect's past, the police stumbled upon a more gruesome fact. James' father, James VanCallis Sr., was a registered sex offender. At that time, both men lived in the same house. The elder had been convicted of molesting a 13-year-old girl. It seemed that the father and son might have been involved in these crimes together. However, the focus was on the younger James, as witnesses saw a middle-aged man and later identified him specifically. A search of the suspect's house revealed a considerable amount of prohibited plants they were growing there. Both were arrested on drug distribution charges, which allowed the potential criminals to be isolated from society and the investigation to proceed calmly without fear of their escape. The police thoroughly checked all the shoes in the men's house, but no tread matched the marks on April's body. DNA tests on their clothing also yielded no matches. However, forensic experts were convinced that the motorcycle had been thoroughly washed with strong chemicals shortly before it was seized. Obviously, someone tried to wash away the evidence, apparently quite successfully. This theory was quickly confirmed by the younger James' girlfriend, Crystal. She said that on the day of April's murder, when she returned home, she found James carefully cleaning his shoes, motorcycle, and helmet with strong disinfectants. This aroused the woman's grim suspicions. The marks on April's head resembled helmet imprints. James was probably wearing it while torturing the girl. Crystal also reported that he had driven to his brother's house in the neighboring town that day, the same one where April lived. Crystal described in detail to the police the shoes James was wearing at the time, his favorite black and white Air Jordan sneakers. They were different from the ones he provided to the investigators during their first meeting. According to the woman, she never saw that pair again after that night. The criminal probably got rid of his favorite sneakers, fearing he couldn't wash away all the traces. Crystal also spoke about her relationship with James, describing him as a cruel and abusive man. Recently, she had felt like his hostage and property. James controlled literally every aspect of her life, even forbidding her to leave the house without his escort. At first, Crystal didn't trust him but was afraid he would kill her if she went to the police. Only after the arrest of the suspect's family was the woman able to testify safely. According to his own confession to his lover, James cleaned his things because he got them dirty with engine oil while repairing his motorcycle. But Crystal didn't believe him. To prove that the suspect really wore the mentioned shoes, the police found his photos from social networks where James was wearing sneakers identical to Crystal's description. Of course, he got rid of the pair he had on the day of the murder. But this did not prevent the investigators from buying the same model and comparing the sole pattern with the marks on April's body. Forensic experts immediately found an exact match. The girl was trampled to death in the very sneakers James had bought about a year before the attack. A check of the criminal's computer confirmed his unhealthy interest in much younger girls. He visited relevant websites. But the most valuable information was obtained from April's phone, which was analyzed in the FBI lab. The girl had a fitness app installed that tracked her speed, steps, heart rate, etc. Shortly after the alarming message to Austin about the attempted abduction, the app recorded a sharp acceleration of April. She was clearly trying to run away from someone. Apparently, that's when James drove up to her on his motorcycle and offered something, scaring the girl. She rushed to escape, but within a few minutes, the fitness tracker showed chaotic, excessively fast phone movements that lasted 10 to 15 minutes. This is how the app recorded April's last struggle for life, which she unfortunately lost. Later, the killer took the victim's phone and headed to his vehicle. The speed was now about 20 kilometers per hour and remained so until the place a kilometer from the attack site where the gadget was thrown away. There were surveillance cameras on this route that captured James VanCallis on his motorcycle. The geolocation of the suspect's phone confirmed that during the murder, he was near the fateful trail. Doubts about his involvement in the crime were completely dispelled. The collected evidence was quite enough to charge James. But there was a problem: no direct evidence, such as the criminal's DNA on the victim's body, could be found. No matter how hard the forensic scientists tried, they found no traces of April's blood on the killer's belongings, equipment, or helmet. He had thoroughly cleaned everything and thrown it away. But despite the circumstantial nature of the evidence, its sheer quantity had to convince the jury. In October 2014, 3 months after the massacre, James was charged. The trial was scheduled for early 2016. The prosecution insisted that the man attacked the girl after she refused to have sexual relations with him. He had long been searching the internet for advice on how to seduce a minor, but all attempts failed. Unable to bear the rejection, the pervert brutally took revenge on the teenager. The defense predictably emphasized the absence of direct evidence of James' guilt, calling the prosecutor's arguments unconvincing. The defendant himself kept claiming his innocence. The lawyer even mentioned that his client had no previous problems with the law. But this was not enough to acquit the killer. After several hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously found James guilty of attempted abduction, rape, and first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. April's mother spoke at length at the sentencing. She was satisfied that the inhumane person who killed her daughter just for refusing him would never be released again. The woman couldn't believe that an adult was capable of such cruelty because of the neglect of their perverse desires. However, James never admitted his guilt, continuing to insist on his non-involvement in the crime. Immediately after the trial, he challenged the verdict by filing an appeal, but to no avail. He is still behind bars today. In memory of April, a memorial garden was laid out not far from the place of her death. A statue of the dog Penny was also installed there, as she led people to the body of her dead owner. Unfortunately, the faithful pet could not find help in time to save the girl's life. But thanks to Penny, it was possible to find and convict the brutal killer, who will never be able to harm another child. That's all for now. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future content. Take care and goodbye.